table, I'm pleased to report that the Chicago Teachers Union House of Delegates voted to end their work stoppage. That means teachers will be back in classes tomorrow, and all students should return on Wednesday. I want to say that CPS put a great proposal on the table that both bargaining teams discussed in detail throughout the day. Now we'll be able to get teachers back into the classroom tomorrow and our kids back on Wednesday. Our team has worked very, very hard every day, over the weekend, long hours at the beginning of the day and into the night, working to get through all the issues that were on the table and get to this moment. We know that this has been very difficult for students and families. Our goal throughout this entire process was to both get our students back to in-person learning as quickly as possible and prevent work disruptions for the rest of the school year. Now, I want to make sure that parents understand we heard you. We're not standing here making this announcement without the parent activism, the parent voices, the parent demands that we heard. And I want you to know that for myself, and I believe that I speak for CEO Martinez, we will never, never not have you at the table with us. It's been extremely helpful to hear from you. The calls, the emails, the text messages, the petition, all the other things that parents have done over this difficult few days to make sure that their voices were heard. I encourage you, keep going. We need you at the table always. Some will ask who won and who lost. No one wins when our students are out of the place where they can learn the best and where they're safest. After being out of school for 4 days in a row, I'm sure many students will be excited to get back into the classroom with their teachers and peers, and their parents and guardians can now breathe a much-deserved sigh of relief. I know that there are hardships that people endured through this process, and we've got to make sure that we are understanding that and doing everything that we can support you to get over these difficult days. This most recent fight, if you want to call it that we have been in is a fight for access to in-person learning. Learning that is far superior to the remote programming our students had to endure for far too long last year. Let me remind you, when we were all remote before, we lost contact with 100,000 children. That's nearly a third of our CPS school population, a third. When we were all remote before, parents and guardians lost their jobs because they were having to monitor their children at home. No parent should be forced to make the choice between earning an income to take care of their family or being home to monitor their kids on remote learning. That's a choice we should never force parents into, absent an emergency that did not manifest itself this time. Think about who our kids are. Over 70% of our kids qualify for free and reduced lunch. That means they come from poor and working class families. Families with adults who sometimes are working multiple jobs to keep the family afloat. Switching completely back to remote learning again without a public health reason to do so would have created and amplified the social, emotional, and economic turmoil that far too many of our families are facing. We can never forget the impact on the lives of our children and their families. They must always be front and center. Every decision has to be made with them at the forefront. There are many people to thank for getting us to this moment. And I want to thank, first and foremost, CPS CEO Pedro Martinez. He and his team have done yeoman's work and been steadfast partners in making sure that we focus on getting our children back to in-person learning. Thanks is also due to CDPH Commissioner Allison Arwady and her team, who would provide the science and the data to make sure that we were making informed decisions that recognize, of course, the surge in Omicron, but didn't abandon the science in the midst of a pandemic and a lot of misinformation that was being spread. So thank you, Dr. Arwady. I'd also like to thank those in our school community, not only for their patience, but for making their voices heard throughout this process. I can't thank the parents enough. Thank you. Thank you for being steadfast. Thank you for being resolute. Thank you for being relentless. And last but absolutely not least, I want to thank the families throughout the CPS ecosystem who have really stood up. I want to thank all the people in the community who help support these families. And I want to thank the teachers. I said this before and I believe it to be true. Teachers are so important to who our young people become. They have such an influence over their development. I know that to be true from my own experience. Teachers in our system love their students. That's why they became teachers in the first place. That's why they stay teachers. That's not what this was about. We love our teachers. We continue to support our teachers and do everything we can because they go above and beyond to support the students and their families, and we can never lose sight of that reality. They're very, very important to the health and well-being of our children. I want to just close by saying this. As long as I am mayor, I will never, ever not be on the side of families and their children. And let me say that in the affirmative. I will always be on the side of our children and their families. I was you when I was a kid growing up in my public school. I needed my school. My school made a difference in my life. I'm not standing here today without the support that I received from so many teachers along the way, so many people who reached out their hand to me. We didn't have much, but I knew, because my parents knew, that education was a great equalizer, and I'm living proof of that. And I want to make sure that we're providing the same kind of opportunities for learning and nurturing and growth for every single student in our system, regardless of their circumstances, regardless of zip code. We owe them that. And I want you to know that I am committed to making sure that we run through walls to make sure that you have access to great quality education in a safe and nurturing environment. With that, I'll now turn it over to CEO Martinez, who can tell you a little bit about things from his perspective. CEO Martinez.